I was going to make a video about how Latias's unique defensive presence in DPP is kind of a problem, but it's only really a problem because of Thunderwave. And then I was like, Kev, haven't you made that video before? It feels like you might have. I still don't know, actually. And then I was like, just as the voices were starting to get to me, I was like, well, is it Latias or is it just T-Wave in general? Because if you look at DPP, a lot of what supports and drives the defense, it's funny because I'm on my way to basketball and driving in defense, am I right? Uh, anyway, one of my enemies hearing me speak about T-Wave potentially not being the most ethical thing in the world. It's not the right way to phrase it, probably not, but when you look at what drives defense in DPP, it's paralysis. Well, okay, it's not always paralysis, but simply put, T-Wave ruins Pokemon more completely and more immediately than almost any other status. And not only that, but it has the least amount of counterplay. You know, if you toxic something, it's still pretty manageable. So paralysis is ruining Pokemon completely and immediately, far more than toxic or even burn. And obviously sleep can't be spammed, and freeze also can't, theoretically anyway. But yeah, T-Wave is just kind of anti-everything, and it's very easy in how it's anti-everything. And that's what brings us to Latias. One of the things that made people hesitant about bringing Latias back, for those who don't know, it was Uber from 2010 to 2018, was that it might be too good defensively. You know, when Latias was banned, it was like, oh, this thing specs Draco Meteors all over the place. And in 2018, it was like, well, we can handle that. But some concerns were bandied about, you know, maybe this thing's too hard to break for the offense at our disposal. And I don't think that's the case, but if it is the case, it's because of Thunderwave. Not because, you know, Thunderwave increases its walling ability like something like Reflect would, but because it effectively does in how it not only robs you of turns against it constantly, and to break it you need turns, every single turn you can get, but also how it slows you down, which, you know, limits when you can outspeed and prevent it from recovering in your face. But it's really the free turns that are the bigger problem, because a lot of Pokemon that switch into Latias and take it on are slower than it anyway. But that's exactly why we have this video, instead of, you know, a Latias thing, because this is not a unique quality to Latias. And when you look at a lot of good balance and defense in DPP, the stuff that shuts offense down hardest is just, you know, blanket Thunderwave, or Body Slamming in the case of Jirachi, blanket paralyzing everything. And no other status can do this. You can't just, you know, spam Will-O-Wisp with everything and just ruin everything the way you can with T-Wave or Body Slam. You know, the big culprits, Latias, Zapdos, Jirachi. I listed Zapdos ahead of Jirachi because Zapdos is crazy broken. But, and Starmie to a lesser extent. But those are the really big three. And you could lump Clefable in there if it runs T-Wave, but it often doesn't. But if it does, you also have stupid stuff like, you know, suddenly it's soft boiling in front of things it really shouldn't be soft boiling in. And basically, like, T-Wave is too all-encompassing as anti-offense for everything, because the answers to it are not very good. You know, think about, well, two things. Think about what answers Thunderwave or paralysis, you know, inherently. And then, but before we get to that, chew on the fact that when you are trying to break through Latias, Zapdos, Jirachi, you have one turn to do so before T-Wave completely ruins you. Like, status like Toxic, in most cases, is not going to automatically... You can get a lot of leverage out of a Toxic Pokemon, but as soon as you get T-Waved, it's almost akin to being KO'd. So, think about, you know, breaking through Jirachi with Flygon, for instance. the Life Orb Flygon sets. Personally, I like Max Attack on those mixed Life Orb Flygons to really hit physically defensive Jirachi hard enough, or way harder than standard mix, which is specially based. But no matter what you do, you are not threatening, a KO from high range. And this, stab, Life Orb, Earthquake, one of the few attacks that's both stab and super effective against it. It's like, well, you have one turn, and it's in Jirachi's favor to body slam. And, so obviously you switch out, right? Well, that's the thing. With Flygon against Jirachi, if you can't threaten it with that, what are you switching to that's not getting threatened? This is why you have a lot of balance teams that are just para spam. I mean, you see it on something like Celebi too. I'm not saying, Celebi is busted because it can T-wave and slow down your progress. But I'm not even necessarily saying that, I have said I don't like T-wave in DPP before. But what my main point is that Thunderwave, if these Pokemon are problematic, like, it's too hard to break through them, it's because of paralysis. I think that's the common thread that's very apparent among all of them. It's not that Latias is too hard to break through. It's not that Zapdos is too hard to break through. I mean, they can be, for sure. Same with Jirachi. But what really puts them over the edge is that you have such a narrow window. You have to be so ridiculously precise before you get T-waved. And no, Lumberry does not really help in this regard. Because, it can help for sure. Lum T-Tar is great. But Lum also means you are not really winning the longevity war. And often in the case against something like Ironhead Jirachi, you want a lot of leftovers on stuff. Because otherwise it's just like, well, I'm going to wear you down. I'm going to switch out and wear you down, basically. But, so you see the dilemma. Now, this is just team building, and it applies to everything. It's not just, well, you can't have lefties and Lum at the same time. That's Pokemon. I'm just saying T-Wave's reach, or Paralysis's reach, is too wide. Because if we look at something like Body Slam, what's absorbing prayer from Body Slam? Ghost types, that's it. And Gengar is not really a Jirachi switch. And most variants of Rotom aren't particularly good into it either. So, yeah, there's that. And then in the other case, in the case of Thunderwave, you have ground types. But the problem is that Latias and Zapdos are used to counter ground types in a lot of cases. They famously struggle into them. So everything else gets T-waved. Now, you also have Clefable itself, which is effectively immune to paralysis because it doesn't get full parried, which I think is a good thing, personally. But it kind of leads to this thing where the only real way to safely absorb para is by slowing the game down and, using a bulkier team that doesn't mind it as much. So if your team is fast-paced, it's difficult to either maintain that pace to be fast enough to where, you're running them over before they can throw their multiple T-waves around too much. And in the case of hyper offense, which is very limiting, or in the case of non-hyper offense, this is why I'm a big fan of things like, Lum, Superachi, and Healing Wish Latias, and stuff like that, but it's still very limiting. Now, a wall or a set of walls or a defensive core or whatever being limiting in terms of the window you have to break through them, that's nothing new. But I think it's more pernicious in the case of paralysis because it's not like something like when you're dealing with spikes. That's just raw damage. You know what you're in for. And with para, it's like, well, roll the dice. And the odds are really, really high. That's the problem. It's, recover spamming going for 25%. My God, it's very much in your favor. It's not just like, well, roll the dice, hope it works. Oftentimes it is more rolling the dice for the offense player, for the offensive Pokemon, because to break through these guys, you have to hit them every single turn. And you get one free turn, that's it. And, not saying that you don't get games where, the defensive player doesn't get those, doesn't get that crucial full para, but the odds are nasty, very nasty. And also think about how often these kinds of Pokemon are paired together. You know, Latias, Jirachi, Zapdos, Clefable, Celebi. And so they're paralyzing everything. You can't just go, with an offensive team, it's not easy. This is my dedicated paralysis absorber. I haven't even mentioned Breloom, but that's because Breloom doesn't absorb T-Wave from anything. It absorbs T-Wave from Surf, Starmie. That's it, which is why I personally like Psychic T-Wave. But Breloom still gives up a rapid spin without punishing it with Pursuit. So, yeah, not ideal in that sense. And Breloom does not switch into Jirachi or Latias or Zapdos. I mean, you could tech a certain Breloom set to mess with them, like Spidef Toxic, which honestly I like personally, but I acknowledge that's a me thing and also unbelievably specific. So basically, to counter, you got to accept paralysis on something, but that really makes it a very, very perilous dance. Now, I'm not saying there's necessarily even a problem, but if there is one, again, it's para to blame and not necessarily, Latias is busted defensively, or honestly, I think Zapdos is more dangerous defensively. But a lot of time, even if you manage to get through the para, you will exert. This is very common. You will exert so much effort trying to break through this one wall, and it's para, that then your team is so wrecked by whatever they have in the back. Like, oh, there comes the sub SD Gliscor, and good night. Scarf Magneton, Magnezone, usually Magneton these days. That's throwing T-Wave in there, and honestly, it's not quite as simple as T-Wave and Win, but it is alarming to me how often T-Wave is the answer because of how close it is to an OHKO move. It's not even that it's OHKO adjacent necessarily, because I realize that sounds like an over-exaggeration, but it's really, it's too much. The slowing down is one thing, the free turns are another, but together they're just too much. If I had to pick one, just the slowing down, I mean, that's fine, but the free turns, the RNG is just 25%, guys. I mean, I know this is another way of saying, Para's busted, Paraclaws, whatever, these discussions we've been having for a while, but really, I love DPP, and I think there's not much I would change about it, almost if anything, except for Para. Like, I really don't think Para brings anything positive to the game. It keeps setup sweepers in check. It keeps everything in check. I think it keeps them in check too much, if anything. But, there are so many good teams that don't need Para to keep setup sweepers in check. Like, we are not in a metagame that is getting bombarded by setup sweepers. So much so that, it's a necessary evil or any junk like that. So, yeah. That's about it, especially because I'm about to arrive home. So, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think. And all that jazz. And see you in the next one.